Hi, my name is Tess Collins. This video is going to examine accreditation standards and technology for the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. Overview. This project is created for the course Tech Applications for Educational Leaders and focuses on the domain Technology and Standards. Our goal of this video is to identify and explore how an accrediting organization addresses technology in their standards. Again, the accrediting organization I chose is Middle States Commission on Higher Education. Their standards are titled Characteristics of Excellence. There are 14 total standards, 2 categories of standards. Those 2 categories are institutional context and educational effectiveness. So within the 14 standards that the Middle States Commission on Higher Education give, there are also fundamental elements clarifying each of those standards. These give qualities of the standards and help institutions determine if they are meeting the standard. Fundamental elements will guide the institution to self-assessment. However, the Middle States Commission on Higher Education also offers a section under each standard that provides additional documentation and analysis of the standard. So otherwise they can give evidence that they're meeting the standards given. We will look at the fundamental elements of the standards provided that include technology. I just want to keep in mind that when examining standards, we first need to look at the institution's mission. The standards are evaluated through each school's mission, and each school's mission is going to be very important and also very different. For example, Sarah Lawrence College is going to have a very different mission than the Art Institute of Philadelphia. This is important when looking at technology within standards. Few actual standards, as we will see, may include aspects of technology. They actually only mention technology. However, if you're accrediting an institution such as the Art Institute of Philadelphia, technology will be involved in almost every standard because that is a huge part of a student's learning process there and their curriculum. The first standard that we're going to look at is Standard 3, Institutional Resources. This is the first standard that technology is mentioned. Standard 3 states, the human, financial, technical facilities, and other resources necessary to achieve an institution's missions and goals are available and accessible. In the context of the institution's mission, the effective and efficient uses of the institution's resources are analyzed as part of an ongoing outcomes assessment. So in terms of technology, this is looking at how technology is used as a resource and why and how they are important to the institution's performance. The fundamental elements that mention technology within Standard 3 are as follows. Recognition in the comprehensive plan that facilities such as learning resources fundamental to all educational and research programs and the library are adequately supported and staffed to accomplish the institution's objectives for student learning, both on campus and at a distance. An educational and other equipment acquisition and replacement process and plan, including provision for current and future technology as appropriate to the educational programs and support services, and evidence of implementation. When looking at Standard 3, Institutional Resources, and its fundamental elements, the criteria to meet this standard, we're really looking at finding the money for up-to-date and useful technology tools to support learning. An institution must have funding and planning on providing these resources. So, for example, this may be a dated example, but an institution may have plans to have the library accessible for off-campus, or plans to have Wi-Fi in every classroom. An engineering department wants to have the most up-to-date technology and resources for students to perform the best. So the institution needs to have a way to fund this and implement this technology in their learning process, make it accessible. As a result, this engineering technology will produce better outcomes for students and learning and assessment for success of the university. Um, we know that outcomes are important in accreditation. Most mission statements of universities indicate the goal to create productive citizens, leading experts, critical thinkers, or contribute to being leaders in their region, and so on. We can see how the standard of institutional resources can include technology and planning for the access and the utilization of technology in the university's goals. Our next standard that mentions technology is Standard 12, General Education. The institution's curricula are designed so that students acquire and demonstrate college level proficiency in general education and essential skills, including at least oral and written communication, scientific and quantitative reasoning, critical analysis and reasoning, and technological competency. The fundamental element as a part of Standard 12 in general education, again, this is a criteria to maybe meet the standard, is institutional requirements assuring that upon degree completion, students are proficient in oral and written communication, scientific and quantitative reasoning, and technological competency appropriate to the discipline. So, an example of this may be in an engineering program, they need to learn how to use a building software. So, maybe their final project, they use this software and their abilities are assessed. And so, when the commission comes, they will see this in the curricula that this is part of how an engineering student is assessed using this technology that's appropriate to their discipline. The final standard we're going to look at is Standard 13, Related Educational Activities, and we're going to focus on distance learning. Related educational activities, the institution's programs or activities that are characterized by particular content, focus, location, mode of delivery, or sponsorship meet appropriate standards. So Standard 13 goes on to review each related activity, but for the purpose of this project, I'm going to discuss distance education. The distance education area of this standard seems to be somewhat more specific and states the following. It states what is distance education, and then the fundamental elements of those are: if the institution provides parallel on-site offerings, the same institution-wide standard should apply to both. They need to be consistent and comparable. Available, accessible, and adequate learning resources such as the library or other information resources have to also be available to students at a distance. There has to be a student identity verification to make sure there's not somebody else taking the course offered. There needs to be training and support for faculty teaching online courses, adequate tech support for electronic offerings and online learners, and there also needs to be assessment of impact of distance learning on mission, including the financial implications of that. So one more thing. Recently, the list of standards was under review and revisions were submitted and approved. A steering committee was developed with 4 principles of importance, and one of these principles is supporting innovation. Supporting innovation describes as institutes work to provide students with options that are accessible, affordable, and technologically current. A variety of innovations are transforming the higher education landscape. MSCHE supports innovation as an essential part of the institutional improvement process. Accreditation must be increasingly nimble, flexible, and adaptable to address the changes affecting higher education while assuring integrity and accountability in the learning experience and student learning outcomes.